Welcome back, Truth Seeker. It is Friday, January 20th, 2023. And before we get into the topic, want to request that if you can get a minute and find the Truth Vibration podcast channel, if you can give him a sub. I was wondering what was going on because he's always been, in the chat, contributing to the community, putting out his own content. And on September 11th, he went to Tyndall Air Force Base to try and educate that community about the ritual they had simulating the 9/11 attack on June 1st, 2001. Again, if you don't know that, look up Project Amalgam Virgo. June 1st, 2001, our federal government simulated the 9/11 attack exactly 102 days before the attack that they said lasted 102 minutes. The cover document that the federal government put out for that simulation has Osama bin Laden's face on it. Of course, in Gematria, Al-Qaeda equals 102. But they also called 9/11 the new Pearl Harbor, and Tyndall Air Force Base opened on Pearl Harbor Day in history, the actual day it happened. He was in Florida where he is educating about that, and it caused him some legal troubles that day. The authorities did not like it. And just recently, he was driving, didn't know his license was suspended, and got put in jail for 60 days. He actually just got released today on 20/1, and he's wondering if that's an accident or not. But if you want to support him, he's a good guy. He preaches knowledge, fitness, diet, and the good news about him being in jail for 60 days is he's a big, strong guy, so nobody messed with him. But I'm glad to say that he did not abandon the community because I thought maybe he moved on, but he is back. And, I just offered him some help, but he said he doesn't need any help. He said he'll be just fine, but he lost his job over this, you guys. He had a small farm going with chickens in a coop. No one was there to tend to any of it, so he comes back. All of his chickens are dead because nobody's fed them. So, I mean, it's sad, but the good news is he's out of jail. And again, I mean, he's not a criminal. They put him in jail for 2 months for driving with a suspended license, which he was unaware had been suspended. So something tells me it's all from his service on 9/11, just trying to wake people up to the agendas. And if you missed what we did in New York on 9/11, the authorities were sure to harass us as well. We did get quite the compliment, though. The Port Authority police said they'd never seen such an organized group getting out the word about the 9/11 nonsense. I thought, wow, it's been 20-some years and we're doing the best job they've ever seen. Guess it needs to happen a lot more and a lot bigger. But anyway, shout out to Truth Vibration Podcast. Please do give him a sub. Help him build up his numbers. That'd be a nice little, that's the least you could do to raise his spirits after spending 60 days in jail. And again, I do think the real offense was speaking out at the Air Force Base. Okay. So, Janet Yellen today, January 20th, Inauguration Day and those type of years, but this date that's written 20/1 in the majority of the world, like 201, Janet Yellen comes out and says, if we don't correct the financial problems we have right now, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, there could be a global financial crisis as soon as June of this year. And remember, it was June of last year that there was a meeting of participating world nations in Dubai, and it was about, global finance and global currency and emerging digital currencies. And the speaker who was there for the U.S. said in 2 years or less, the U.S. will make the full conversion to the digital currency. And June of this year is within that 2-year time frame. It would be a year later. But how did we get here? How did we get here to being on the verge of this global financial crisis? For the person who watches CNN, they'd say, well, there's been a pandemic that really hurt the world. And, now there's this Russia-Ukraine war that's really having an impact on the world. If you're that person out there and you've tuned into this video tonight, you need to realize that all of these world events are being manipulated intentionally. Again, I don't know what it is about people who don't pay attention when our world leaders talk about this new world order. It's been going on since I was a child. You know, the first Bush in office was always talking about that New World Order. Coincidentally enough, he even gave a speech about it on September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day of the 9/11 attack. You know? One of the most blatant New World Order things in recent times was when Trump was president and they were swearing in Mad Dog Mattis to be the Secretary of Defense, and John McCain was still alive. And when it was John McCain's time to ask his question, his first question was, he said, "So Mad Dog, are you aware of the state of affairs with the New World Order?" And Mad Dog goes, "I am." It's like, okay. Is anyone watching this right now? I know it's only on C-SPAN, but my God. Okay. What is the New World Order for people who don't know? Well, there's an entity in the world. I'm going to put it on this slide just because you have all these graphics up here. The New World Order, and it's going to lead right into today, why we're getting this warning from Janet Yellen about a global financial crisis, possibly as soon as this June. But what is the New World Order? Let's just go back to George Herbert Walker Bush, since he kind of put it on the map for a lot of us in America. I mean, there's plenty of other people who've echoed the same sentiments, but a lot of people, when they think New World Order, they think of Bush because he gave that speech about it on September 11th, 1990. And what was Bush a member of? He was a member of Yale's Skull and Bones. And Janet Yellen likely is as well, because she went to Yale. Skull and Bones, you have the option if you're a member to disclose if you were ever a member. Both Bushes disclosed that they were members, but Bill Clinton didn't. And I suspect Clinton was probably in Skull and Bones since he was the president between the two Bushes, and he also went to Yale like Hillary. There's a lot of them that have gone to Yale. And you might recall the movie about Paul Walker, or the movie starring Paul Walker, the actor who's since died. But he was in the Skulls about Skull and Bones. That movie came out 201 days after his birthday, and in Gematria, Skull and Bones equals 201. And he died November 30th, 2013 in a weird accident with a red Porsche, just like how in the movie about Skull and Bones, the fraternity gifts him a red Porsche. Then he dies in a red Porsche on November 30th, 2013. 5 years to the day of George Herbert Walker Bush dying on that day, 11/30. 11 plus 30, 41. In Gematria, Skull and Bones also equals 41. But anyway, Skull and Bones, they are modeled after the Bavarian Illuminati, which was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, and the Jesuits served the Roman Catholic Church. And the Jesuit logo has the Templar cross in it. And Skull and Bones is also modeled after how they get their symbolism, I should say, from how the Knights Templar buried their dead in an ossuary. If you don't know what that is, the process was you would take a dead soldier, you'd dig a shallow grave, you'd put the whole body in there, you'd bury the body, you'd let the body decompose down to nothing but the bones, and then you would take this decorated box called an ossuary, and you'd place the bones in a specific order, and the last bones you would put in are the largest bones in the body, the thigh bones, cross them, and then you'd put the skull right on top, and then you'd seal the box. The Templar way of preserving the dead. And anyhow, this 201 number, not only does Skull and Bones equal 201, so does the Jesuit Order, which equals 201. Order of Illuminati equals 201 in Gematria. Again, founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, who died in history 201 days after the anniversary of its establishment. Kind of like how State of Israel equals 201, and David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister who declared it a nation, died 201 days after the anniversary of its establishment. Again, this 201 number is monstrous with the Jesuits in their history. Again, look into Catherine the Great preserving the order by saving it with 201 Jesuit priests. Look into Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, the first to live in Suite 201 at the Vatican. Pope Francis, like how the Jesuits were originally created in Paris, France, by Ignatius of Loyola, whose name equals 201, like Jorge Mario Bergoglio equals 201. Again, it's a long list with the Jesuits in 201. But remember, it was the Jesuit Klaus Schwab who spearheaded the Event 201 coronavirus pandemic simulation, October 18th, 2019, the exact same day the military World Games began in Wuhan, China. The military World Games are credited to the Jesuit Order, and that's why they started in Italy, in Rome, where the Jesuits are. And they started in 95, like the Jesuits' original purpose was to counter the 95 Theses written by Martin Luther, kind of like Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated on the 95th day of 1968, and then the first major gun control 201 days later. But anyway, Event 201 was the coronavirus pandemic simulation, and the main co-sponsor was William Henry Gates, who people know as Bill Gates, but William Henry Gates equals 201. Again, his wife, Melinda, at the time, comes from a family of Jesuit priests, has the same birthday. August 15th is the day the Jesuits were born in Paris, France. Her name was Melinda French Gates. Again, the Jesuits from France, Pope Francis. But anyway, coronavirus. Coronavirus comes. And then we have to, according to the authorities, and again, every little Jesuit puppet had their little numerical ritual, from Donald Trump to Gavin Newsom to Cuomo to Fauci to the rest of them. They all had their nice little rituals and played their part. Joe Biden's another one of them. Let's not forget that Joe Biden sacrificed his whole family in 201 rituals. Trump just buried his ex-wife on the 201st day of the year in her little Jesuit death. But anyway, all these Jesuits played their part in creating the fear and the thought that there was a pandemic, and the reason for the lockdown is our rights and liberties were stripped, and as people lost their businesses. And then his government said, well, you know what? We'll start sending you $1,000 checks. And then we printed trillions of dollars in money. And then we put ourselves in a big financial hole. And again, anytime you print money, there's mass inflation, and now things are so expensive. So coronavirus, a big Jesuit scam on the people that really helped get us on this global financial crisis path. Again, all of you guys who think it was just some act of God, uncontrollable thing, pull your head out of your ass. Go back and listen to Anthony Fauci 10 days before the Jesuit pawn Trump took office. Anthony Fauci was speaking at Jesuit Georgetown on January 10th, 2017, saying why there would be a pandemic in the time of the Trump administration. I mean, how do you know such things? How can you be so certain there's going to be a pandemic? He was 1,000,000% sure about it. Again, Jesuit scumbag. Anyhow, then what happens after coronavirus? On Memorial Day, right? The day that came out of the American Civil War, we have the George Perry Floyd kneeling ritual that creates more orchestrated chaos. Portland, Oregon, my hometown's been all boarded up for the last 2 years ever since George Floyd, and so have a number of other places in the country. But this was another staged ritual. In Gematria, George Perry Floyd equals 201. His death was compared to the killing of a Gematriae in Paris, France, the home of the Jesuits, which happened on the 201st day of 2016, exactly 201 weeks before George Floyd. And somebody just gave me another piece. I've been missing it the whole time. A Gematriae, not only was he killed on the 201st day of the year, exactly 201 weeks before George Floyd, but he was also born on the 201st day of the year. And again, George Floyd was compared to Michael Brown, and Michael Brown also equals 201, and that happened right outside St. Louis, which is a major Jesuit stronghold. They got one of their 27 universities there. And as we know, Black Lives Matter equals Society of Jesus, which is the formal title of the Jesuits. But again, George Floyd, they show that on TV, they get everybody provoked, and then just like with Michael Brown and Ferguson, when they burned the town down, they bust in protesters, and they create this staged chaos. And then next thing you know, people start, besides they bust in, other people start saying like, wait a minute, man, I can go down and rob the Louis Vuitton store right now? I mean, I can get one of those watches finally? The glass is broken, I'm going in too. Again, they're instigating and leading people into these behaviors. So they bring on COVID. They bring on the George Floyd chaos. Then what? After the George Floyd chaos, all the Confederate statues get torn down throughout the nation. And even in D.C., the only Confederate statue, that of Albert Pike, gets torn down on June 19th, 2020, Juneteenth. Again, George Floyd thing happened on Memorial Day, which came out of the Civil War with the Confederates. Then the only Confederate statue in D.C. gets torn down. And then from June 19th to January 6th, want to guess how many days later it was? When the Confederate flag flew? Confederate in Gematria equals 201, and it was 201 days after the Albert Pike statue fell. And as the headlines continue to roll out, government informant, government informant, government informant. Everyone who led the breach of the Capitol turns out to be a government informant. And now, even this week, today's CNN was covering it, more arrests this week. Just turned up that 3 of the other instigators were Marines, active duty Marines. I'm sure they're part of the psychological operations units as well. But again, all of these things are huge 201 rituals. And it reminds that Lincoln once said there never would have been an American Civil War without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. So what have we really learned? The answer to that question is nothing, and there's a reason the answer is nothing. It's because who controls our schools? Oh, the same Jesuits, who make sure we know nothing about nothing, except for what they want us to know. Important lessons like Christopher Columbus discovered the land where people already lived. Paul Revere had a torch and a horse and alerted everybody about the redcoats were coming. Again, you just think about these things. These stories don't make any sense. Here, go try to wake up your town. Go get on a horse and get a torch and go down the road screaming out, the Jesuits are coming. Watch how nothing happens. Watch how it doesn't make any history books. It's because these stories are BS. They don't make any sense. I was a child and having to think about these in the classroom. I was like, that wouldn't happen. Nobody would even hear the guy. I wasn't wrong. Okay. Well, what else is contributing to the chaos? We got COVID. We have the destruction of towns that just haven't been as profitable. Seattle, Washington right now. Everything's closing down in Seattle, Washington. And don't forget how in Seattle, just north of Portland, the 2 cities that had the biggest George Floyd protests, the whitest cities in America with the longest Black Lives Matter protest, the absolute mockery. But don't forget how they set up right next to the Jesuit University, Seattle University, the, what did they call it? I forget what the name of the areas that they called it, but it was essentially the same as like what the Confederate States declared themselves in the time of the Civil War. The Autonomous Zone, that's what they called it. The Autonomous Zone, right next to the Jesuit University. And then that, what's that other secret society that's right there in Capitol Hill? And that's what they call it there, too. They call it that the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. It was all predictive programming. But the Oddfellow Society, the building was 201 years old. Or the Oddfellow Society was 201 years old. That was right there in the middle of the Autonomous Zone that everybody was climbing all over, if you remember any of the footage from the time that was going on in Seattle. But anyway, you just have all these things that are just leading up to where we are right now. And then you have Russia, Ukraine. And man, Putin, he's the new Hitler. Let's not forget that Adolphus Hitler, the name on his birth certificate equals 201, and he wore that red and black like the Jesuits, and the Catholic Church turned a blind eye, and God knows where Germany got their money from. Maybe it was that central bank out of that independent city-state, the Vatican, that also has the ability to print its own money. Anyhow, Russia, Ukraine. Joe Biden goes to the European Union 201 days after his birthday in 2021. The European Union, for the record, equals 201. But it was 201 days after Biden's birthday, and he's in Europe, and he says, Putin, don't you dare mess with Ukraine. Again, 201 days after his birthday. And then Biden and Putin meet on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 2021 of all days, to discuss what's going on with Ukraine, which just happened to be 201 days after the first ever Jesuit Ignatian year was declared on May 20th. The day in history that Billy Cannon, it is the day in history that Billy Cannon died. But no, the day in history that Ignatius Loyola was shot with a cannonball. And then Billy Cannon, of course, died on that day. He's the LSU Heisman great. The only LSU Heisman winner until Joe Burrow, who just happened to transfer to LSU the same exact day that Billy Cannon died. Just like how he played in the Jesuit Super Bowl last year that was all synced up with Russia, Ukraine, and played the 4 teams in the playoffs that just happened to be the same 4 teams that Billy Cannon played for in the NFL. But anyway, that's beside the point. Again, all the 201s with Russia, Ukraine. And then when the war breaks out, it breaks out in the Donbass region, which equals 201. And then this year, or this past year, 2022, on the 1-year anniversary of Biden warning Putin not to mess with Ukraine, on the 1-year anniversary, which again was 201 days after Biden's birthday, the headline, the international headline is that Russia has taken full control of the Donbass region, the region that equals 201. And again, these are all of the things that have us on the brink of a financial disaster. COVID, the money printing, the destruction of economies and cities, Portland and Seattle, vacant, like a lot of other places, the Russia-Ukraine spending, the rising energy costs because of all of this stuff is being orchestrated and manipulated. And again, people will be like, oh, Zach's a shill. It's not the Jesuits, it's the Jews, it's Israel. It's like, okay, the Jesuits have been running the world for longer than Israel's existed. Israel was created in a Catholic Jesuit ritual. The reason it was established on 14/5 is because there's 145 more chapters in the Catholic Old Testament than Protestant Old Testament, which is the Jewish section of the Bible. Again, the Jesuits are... The original Jesuits were Jews who converted to Catholicism because there was a reason for the Jews and the Catholics to come together in the Protestant Reformation, which was targeting both of them and trying to eradicate them from Europe, which they failed at, obviously. There's a lot of Catholics in the world. But anyway, it's not hard to see how we got here, especially when you know what's going on and you can recognize the simple pattern that most people are oblivious to because they have no idea about 201. They haven't even heard of Event 201. They don't even know who Klaus Schwab is. They don't know that Pope Francis is the first Jesuit pope or he's the first to live in Suite 201. Remember who went right over there at the start of the war? Remember Pope Francis, by the numbers, meeting with Vladimir Putin. And then here we are today. It's on 20/1, isn't it? And Janet Yellen, who went to Yale, likely a member of Skull and Bones, another 201 order, she says financial collapse by June. Unless we correct the problems. So it remains to be seen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But the thing is, whatever doesn't happen this June, or if it does happen, it's only getting pushed down the road. They're only kicking the can down the road. All of these things that they have planned for us, war, essentially a digital prison where every last thing we do is tracked. All of these things are going to come about unless the people of the world rise up and stop it. But the powers that shouldn't be, they're clever. They do things slowly, and they do things in a way that's convincing enough for the people to march along to it. Like when 2 towers became 0 before they became 1 on 9/11 in the huge Jesuit ritual. Again, 201 is the reflection of 102, like how they simulated the attack 102 days earlier, and again said the attack lasted 102 minutes. And for all you guys who ask the same questions, how do you know it lasted 102 minutes? Just type it in. You'll see. Even the History Channel made up a documentary, The 102 Minutes That Changed America. Go figure Art of War equals 102, World War equals 102. Again, Art of War translated by the Jesuit priest Father Amiot. Art of War, Sun Tzu. No historical record of Sun Tzu ever existed, but we know about it thanks to the Jesuit priests, and their logo's the sun. By the way, a Jesuit priest did die today on 20/1 on his 78th day of his age. Jesuit 78, the Jesuit Order 201. They even cannibalized their own. But, yeah, just all these endless rituals. And again, from Biden to Trump to Putin to the rest of them, they're all participating in their very own 201 rituals. You can see they're all in the club. And here in America, people are still fighting over the political parties. Haven't figured out that they both sold us out. They don't represent us. Again, just so you can see these headlines today. CNN running away with this story, bringing back the Capitol insurrection, and now we got 3 Marines. And again, you read the story, it said the Marines were joking about this being the new Civil War. Again, started with George Floyd. Think about all the comparisons about January 6th and the Black Lives Matter protest. But again, George Floyd on Memorial Day, which came out of the Confederate, or the Civil War. Then all the Confederate statues go down. Then this, where the Confederate flag flies through the Capitol 201 days after the only Confederate statue goes down. Let's not forget Albert Pike also wrote the letter about 3 world wars, and he published that on August 15th, which is the Jesuit Order's birthday. And let's not forget the joke they just did in Afghanistan with their government falling on the Jesuit Order's birthday a couple of years ago. But anyhow, Marines, 3 Marines. We won't even get into why 3. But also today on CNN's front page, they had to bring back up, they had to make this top story. Of course, they were talking about it yesterday, but even bigger today. Remember, the case that overturned Roe v. Wade, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, 201. Ketanji Brown Jackson, nominated 201 days before her birthday. Stephen Breyer announces his retirement 201 days before his birthday, and his birthday just happens to be the Jesuit Order's birthday, August 15th. All of these rituals, plus everything else that went with it. Dobbs versus Jackson, then a week later, the first black female Supreme Court Justice, Jackson, who against the 116th, and African Americans 116, and so is Jackson. But again, I mean, they're talking about how Roe versus Wade has killed the most black babies, and it impacts black women the most. And then a week later, they're giving you the first black female Supreme Court justice, whose name's also Jackson. I mean, the mockery these people get away with. And not to mention everything else they did with it. The memo leaked by the numbers. All the Jesuits on the Supreme Court. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. For all of you out there who watch my videos and think I'm a shill because I'm not blaming Jews in Israel, think about it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was Jewish, dies on the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, 187 days after her birthday, when Washington, D.C. and Society of Jesus are 187, and then she's replaced by a Catholic. Again, Judaism is very small compared to Catholicism, you know. The Catholic Church has had militaries for thousands of years. I don't ever remember learning about any Jewish militaries outside of Israel, which, again, State of Israel, 201. It's a Jesuit puppet state. And again, the Jesuits are a Jewish Catholic alliance. But I'm just saying, all of you guys who just blindly blame all Jews, that is putting the blame in the wrong place. You have to put it where it belongs. The Jesuits who run the show. And you can't just blame anyone who went to a Jesuit university either. I mean, the one thing about that's when most people think of Jesuits, they think of their universities because they're the best in the nation. But, well, outside of maybe Ivy League schools. But anyway, that's why that's in the news again today on 20/1. And here was CNN's top story this morning. CIA chief warns Zelensky of new Russian offensive. Again, just so people can be reminded how important 201 is to the CIA. The words in their logo, Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America, are 201. It was established on September 18th, 47, the 201st day of the Pope's age. The Jesuits served the Pope. Catholic Pope and the Jesuit Order 201, like national intelligence. And then the CIA's motto, the work of a nation, the center of intelligence, it's also 201, just like the words in the logo. Everything is 201 with the CIA, which many people for many years, long before I figured out this code, have said the CIA is a Catholic institution. That's why there's been so many Catholic heads, and that's why its nickname is Catholics in Action. The murder trial coming out of, is it Massachusetts again? I forget. They've been talking about this all since the whole year came around. I've been pointing out the whole way. It's got the Jesuit fingerprints all over it. Look at today's headline on 20/1. The woman who was reportedly murdered, she had $1.88 million in real estate. Remember, the Order of Illuminati was first called the Bavarian Illuminati before it was renamed. So on 20/1, we get this headline. 1.88. Remember, the U.S. dollar bill denominations, the 1, the 2, the 5, the 10, the 20, the 50, the 100. Add it together, it equals 188. Money. Illuminati symbolism all over it. 13s galore. 13 families in the original Illuminati. Also, again today, Jesuit priest Xavier Albo, dead. Born November 4th, dead January 20th, dead on his 78th day of his age, on 20/1. In-house ritual. And also in the news today, don't forget the Holy Bible equals 201. Again, that's where the Jesuit number code comes from. But how about this David Crosby follow-up? Heaven is overrated. And again, we talked about this earlier, but Neil Young put out a tribute today. We were talking about how yesterday David Crosby died on Neil Young's 69th day of his age, and Neil Young joined the band Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the year 69. And last year, Neil Young participated in some monster Jesuit rituals with Joe Rogan, another Jesuit puppet, going back and forth in tribute to Neil Young's song, The Needle and the Damage Done. And also yesterday, Ernie Johnson on TNT, you know, the white boy on the TNT basketball cast, yesterday they were paying tribute to his mother who had just passed away. And yesterday, the day they were doing this, January 19th, was spanning 201 days from his upcoming birthday. What do you know? So, his mother passed January 17th. 17/1, like 171. That's the 18th triangular number. 18 is a big number with TNT, Turner Broadcasting. And if you've read my last book, Number Games 9/11 to Coronavirus, at the end of the book, I talk about the Ted Turner partner, the co-founder of CNN, how he died in a big old fat Jesuit ritual. So, CIA, CNN. I'm not even going to talk about Sam Bankman-Fried. Just never forget he filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy on 11/11 and Jew equals 11. Anyway. That's pretty much how they've done it. Of course, there's been a lot of other 201s in history, but those are the big ones right now. Those are all the contributing factors. And I just wanted to lay it out nice and cleanly. For anyone who's new here and needs to go back and verify the facts and the dates, please do that. I know that everything I said in this video is 1,000,000% accurate because I've been covering it nonstop every day through all of it. And I've written about 5,000 rough drafts of a book that I still haven't put out about 201. And part of the reason I feel like I can't finish is because like something big happens every single day, and I'm like, I feel like this got to be in the book. I guess I'll just make a YouTube video. Because as we all know, I can write a great book and it might sell a total of 5,000 copies. I can make a YouTube video and it'll get at least 5,000 views. So in a way, video is probably more effective. But the one thing about a book is it can't be deleted by a Google censorship Nazi. So anyhow, we will leave it there for now, Truth Seeker. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and hit the like. Appreciate everyone who hits the share. And one more time, like where I started too. The Truth Vibration Podcast. Please give this man a sub. He spent the last 60 days in jail, and I really do think it has a lot to do with the fact that he went out and shared the Gematria knowledge at Tyndall Air Force Base on September 11th, because he's mentioned he's had some run-ins with the authorities ever since. And then he was surprised that he didn't realize his license was suspended. And for that, they put him in jail for 60 days. But hey, he's a good influence, strong guy. He eats well, works out, exercises his mind, wants a better world. So definitely a guy worth subbing. And again, just help him get his spirits up after spending 60 days in the slammer. So all right. Thank you to the mods. Thank you, Charmed One, for always linking everything. And we'll call it a night. Until next time, Truth Seeker.